This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. Good morning, I'm John Trout. It's Thursday, October 17th, 2024. Here's what's coming up on America in the Morning.
It was a big day for town halls on the campaign trail.
I'm the father of IVF.
My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency.
I'm Jim Roope.
Activity in the courts surrounding former President Donald Trump in Georgia.
To seize the presidential term of office.
I'm Clayton Neville.
Committee will hear testimony from a man scheduled to be executed tonight, and a judge strikes down an Alabama rule that purged voter rolls. We'll have those stories.
The Dow opens this morning at its 38th record high of the year, and Netflix reports results. I'm Jessica Ettinger.
Members of Eric and Lyle Menendez's family are calling for their release.
I had no idea of the extent of the abuse.
I'm Ed Donahue.
And Elon Musk to sue California. All ahead on America in the Morning. Vice President Kamala Harris and former President Donald Trump continue their run for the White House with appearances on Fox News. A recap from correspondent Jim Roope.
Both candidates waded into waters that could have been dangerous for them. Trump, with a history of what some would call misogynistic acts and comments about women, well, he was in front of an audience of all women at a town hall that was taped in Georgia and aired on Fox yesterday. Trump made his case as a supporter and advocate for women, including a now viral statement he made about in vitro fertilization.
Oh, I want to talk about IVF. I'm the father.
You don't hear that every day.
I'm the father of IVF.
It's unclear exactly what he meant by "I'm the father of IVF," as IVF has been around for decades. He also spoke about abortion and striking down Roe v. Wade, putting the issue of abortion in the hands of individual states. He also promised to protect women's sports and banning transgender women, men who undergo so-called transition therapies and surgeries in order to live as women, banning them from playing in women's sports.
We absolutely stop it. You can't have it. It's a man playing in the game.
Kamala Harris also treading into unfriendly territory, appearing on Fox News for a 30-minute interview with Bret Baier. It started out tense with a question about immigration and if Harris and the Biden administration regrets reversing former President Trump's border policies, which resulted in letting into this country the men who murdered Laken Riley, Rachel Morin, and 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary, whose mother testified.
They were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungary's life.
Baier asked if Harris feels she should apologize to Mrs. Nungary, to which Harris replied,
I'm so sorry for her loss. Sincerely.
It was contentious at times between Harris and Baier, but civil.
I'm in the middle of responding to the point you're raising, and I'd like to finish.
Yes, ma'am.
Harris was able to get in what she wanted Fox viewers to know, who are traditionally Trump supporters, about her thoughts on their candidate.
And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it.
Fox News anchors actually complimented Harris on her performance on the network, one saying Harris, too, should be pleased with how well she did. I'm Jim Roope.
The legal battles surrounding former President Trump continue on a number of fronts in Georgia ahead of November's presidential election. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports.
A Georgia judge has temporarily halted a new rule that requires poll workers to hand count ballots in November. Republicans pushed for that rule after Trump lost Georgia to President Biden in 2020. They say the intent is to make this election more secure and more transparent. Democrats argue, though, the change would lead to chaos and delay election results. In his ruling this week, the judge in the case pointed to what he referred to as fresh uncertainty weeks before Election Day. The decision read, anything that adds uncertainty and disorder to the electoral process disserves the public. Meanwhile, Fani Willis, the Fulton County, Georgia DA, is back in the headlines. It was Willis who launched a slew of charges against Trump and his allies before they were ultimately paused.
To accomplish the illegal goal of allowing Donald J. Trump to seize the presidential term of office
Trump has called Willis's effort to go after him election interference.
Let's go get Trump. And then she can take beautiful trips on the sea, beautiful trips to foreign islands. Her and her lover, they have such a good time.
The Georgia case has been put on hold following the Supreme Court's presidential immunity ruling and as the court sorts through Willis's recent alleged affair and how it could impact her role in the Trump case. Willis asking the state court of appeals to reinstate 6 criminal charges against Trump and 5 co-defendants. There weren't enough specifics for the defendants to defend themselves in the case, according to the judge the first time. The accusations surround Trump trying to overthrow the election results in 2020. But Corey Lewandowski with the Trump campaign told Fox News it doesn't change anything.
The voters don't care about it, Martha. What they care about is the pocketbook issues, and they ask the age-old question, are you better off today than you were 4 years ago? And by every discernible metric, the answer is no.
I'm Clayton Neville.
When we return on America in the Morning, adding names back onto the voting rolls in Alabama after these messages. Welcome back. You're with America in the Morning. It's not yet Halloween, and we have snow in the forecast. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
A warmer day is in store today for many in the plains and parts of the Midwest, thanks to rather gusty winds from the south. Highs in the low to mid-60s in places like Omaha on Wednesday give way to 70s instead for today, with a similar day-to-day jump of at least 6 to 10 degrees expected from the Dakotas into much of Iowa, Minnesota, and Kansas. However, these gusts will bring more than just warmer weather. Prime conditions for the start and the spread of fires can also be expected due to dry ground and very low humidity under sunshine, with the greatest concern for an enhanced fire risk from central and southern Minnesota into far northern Oklahoma. By contrast, cooler conditions settle into the west today as a strong storm kicks southeastward after pressing into the Pacific Northwest. As it does so, the season's first impactful snow accumulation is expected for some of the higher elevations above 6,000 to 7,000 feet from central Utah and western Colorado into northwestern Wyoming as temperatures fall from tonight into Friday, perhaps bringing difficult travel conditions in spots along with a chance for some thunder. Some snow may also fall over southern Montana and the Cascades of Washington and Oregon, with showers from western Utah to much of Idaho and the northwest coast. For the east, areas near Lakes Erie and Ontario finally dry out as the storm departs, with a dry day in store for most places east of the Mississippi River. That storm can continue to produce showers from the Outer Banks of North Carolina to coastal Virginia early today, but outside of a shower grazing far south Florida, most places simply have a milder day as temperatures start to rebound. In Des Moines, Iowa, expect a windy day with sunshine and a high of 69. In Portland, Oregon, watch for a couple of showers around with a high getting up to 62. That's the nation's weather. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Remember to follow us wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, and YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. A man who was scheduled to be executed later today will first testify before a House committee in Texas, his life still hanging in the balance. Pamela Furr explains more on the background of the controversial Robert Roberson case.
Roberson says in January 2002, he and his little girl, Nikki, fell asleep in their East Texas home, and he later woke up after hearing a sound and found she had fallen out of bed. Later that morning, when Roberson discovered his daughter was unconscious and her lips were blue, he rushed her to a local emergency room. He showed little emotion at the hospital, according to witnesses, which furthered law enforcement suspicions. Within a day, Roberson was arrested on a capital murder charge, saying little Nikki's cause of death was shaken baby syndrome. It should be noted, in 2009, the American Academy of Pediatrics changed the name of shaken baby syndrome, abusive head trauma, to include injuries caused by mechanisms other than shaking alone. This is why Roberson's attorneys have been fighting hard to get him off death row. Now, it should also be noted the jury in Roberson's trial never heard the extent of how sick Nikki was from the day she was born, that she'd been to the hospital more than 40 times in her short life, or that 2 days before she died, she registered a 104.5 degree fever at the doctor's office. Attorneys say she was sent home with a medication that has since been deemed too dangerous for children, a drug that now carries a black box warning from the FDA. Roberson spoke to NBC News from death row earlier this month.
I don't want to die, but I'm not afraid of dying. Why? I know I'm going to heaven.
I'm Pamela Furr.
A court ruling in Alabama could add a lot of names back onto the voting rolls. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
A federal judge is halting an Alabama program that made thousands of legal voters inactive ahead of the November elections. Republican Secretary of State Wes Allen launched the program in August, saying it would begin a process of removing non-citizens from state voter rolls. Testimony this week before a federal judge revealed that over a third of the more than 3,200 voters identified by the program were in fact citizens who are legally allowed to vote. A U.S. district judge ruled that all of those identified by the program would be made active again and can vote in the November elections. I'm Haya Panjwani.
Mortgage rates increase and why these airline employees are upset. Those stories and more when America in the Morning continues after these messages. Welcome back. This is America in the Morning. The Business Report is brought to you by Fisher Investments. Fisher Investments has a team of specialists in investing, financial planning, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. With the Thursday Report, here's CNBC's Jessica Ettinger.
Wall Street opens this morning with the Dow at yet another record high, back above 43,000. All the major averages were in the green yesterday.
I've never seen a market that's doing so well that nobody talks about. And the path of least resistance, in my opinion, continues higher.
IG North America's J.J. Kinahan on CNBC. General Motors investing more than $500 million in a joint venture to mine EV battery raw materials in the U.S. It's betting the future on electric. And Amazon is betting on nuclear power.
Here in Virginia, which is home to nearly half of all the data centers in the U.S., Amazon Web Services just signed an agreement with Dominion Energy, the state's utility company, to explore the development of an SMR, that is a small module nuclear reactor.
We see the need for gigawatts of power in the coming years, and there's not going to be enough wind and solar projects to be able to meet the needs. And so nuclear is a great opportunity. Also, the technology is really advancing to a place with SMRs. It's going to be safe, easy to manufacture.
AWS CEO Matt Garman. SMRs are an advanced kind of nuclear reactor with a smaller physical footprint, allowing them to be built closer to the grid. They also have faster build times than traditional reactors.
CNBC's Diana Olick. Mortgage demand tanked last week because interest rates popped up to a 2-month high. The average rate on a 30-year fixed-rate home loan, 6.6%, according to Mortgage News Daily. That's 0.5% higher than just a month ago.
We appear to have some angry employees at United Airlines. What's up?
Well, the airline is flying high for sure when it comes to making money. United's out with strong quarterly results, helped by lower jet fuel prices. And its shares were up yesterday, but plans to take $1.5 billion and buy back its own stock? That'll prop up the share price for investors, but it's not sitting well with flight attendants who are working without a contract. The flight attendants at United have authorized a strike. A federal mediator's involved, and the union president spoke with CNBC about United's CEO.
It's hypocritical and really dishonest because he's not sending decision makers to the table. I have done dozens of contract negotiations, and I know what it looks like when a company actually wants to work honestly with you to get improvements to workers. And that is not what's happening at United Airlines. And instead, they are sending this money to Wall Street rather than investing in the frontline workers who are with the passengers more than anyone else.
The Association of Flight Attendants International President Sarah Nelson on CNBC. On today's watch list, earnings are coming from Netflix. We find out how many people applied for unemployment benefits last week.
CNBC's Jessica Ettinger. When we return on America in the Morning, the Menendez brothers incarcerated, but for how much longer after these messages? This is America in the Morning. Welcome back. Relatives of Eric and Lyle Menendez are urging officials to resentence the convicted brothers, but not all of their family want them out of prison. Ed Donahue reports.
The brothers were convicted in 1996 of killing their parents in their Beverly Hills mansion. The plea for their release comes from multiple generations of the family, including their mother's sister, Joan Anderson Vandermolen.
I had no idea of the extent of the abuse they suffered at the hands of my brother-in-law. None of us did.
The brothers had said they feared their parents were about to kill them to prevent the disclosure of the father's long-term sexual molestation of Eric. Prosecutors at the time contended there was no evidence of molestation, but the LA County DA says it's reviewing new evidence. Cousin Anna Maria Baralt is part of the family effort to free the brothers.
If Lyle and Eric's case were heard today, with the understanding we now have about abuse and PTSD, there is no doubt in my mind that their sentencing would have been very different.
The Menendez's uncle, Milton Anderson, said he believes the appropriate sentence is life in prison without parole. I'm Ed Donahue.
Musk versus California. Elon Musk is suing the State Coastal Commission in Los Angeles federal court, alleging they rejected the company's plan to increase rocket launches from an Air Force base in Santa Barbara County because of political bias. The agency's commissioners voted to reject the Air Force's plan for increased launches over concerns that all SpaceX activity would be considered military operations. The agency is denying any bias toward the SpaceX founder. America in the Morning for Thursday, October 17th, 2024 is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One. This is America in the Morning from Westwood One. I'm John Trout. Coming up this half hour.
Reaction to a contentious Senate debate in Texas. I'm Clayton Neville.
The U.S. uses stealth bombers to attack Yemen. Israel gets in more Gaza aid. And a hurricane-related animal cruelty arrest in Florida.
A lawsuit by a grieving family putting together the pieces after losing a loved one during Hurricane Helene. I'm Katie Clark with details.
A judge has sentenced Robert Tellis to 28 years in Nevada State Prison for killing an investigative journalist. I'm Mike Hempen.
Top 3 big tech companies want to go nuclear. I'm tech correspondent Chuck Palm.
Jerry Seinfeld is backpedaling on some of the statements he made this summer. I'm Kevin Carr.
Back after these messages. There is snow in the forecast. Welcome back to America in the Morning. A major winter storm makes its way into the west. Here's AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
A large and potent storm will blast its way onshore in the Pacific Northwest through the day today and quickly become even better organized as it heads toward the southwestern United States. This feature will drag a powerful cold front across the west that will not only bring in much cooler air from Washington to Montana and much of Nevada, it will present the likelihood of perhaps a couple of inches of snow in parts of the high terrain from tonight into Friday from north central Wyoming and the Wasatch Range of Utah into the Rocky Mountains of Colorado. Temperatures during this time frame will generally keep snow levels above 6,500 feet or so, but any accumulating snow can mean difficult travel and periods of reduced visibility. Some spots may even have thunder during the snowfall as this disturbance becomes more and more intense. In the nation's midsection, significantly warmer air will arrive on very strong southerly winds today. Gusts of 30 to 40 miles per hour possible for a time from the Oklahoma and Texas panhandles into northern Minnesota. Gusts this strong will mean not only localized power outages in the central and northern plains, but also an elevated fire risk due to the combination of very low humidity levels and dry vegetation across the region. In the east, the risk for lake effect showers finally comes to an end today off Lakes Ontario and Erie, leaving a generally dry day region-wide as temperatures finally start to moderate after a rather chilly start to this week for many. The risk for frost or even a freeze in spots does continue tonight, as light winds under high pressure will allow for nighttime lows to continue to fall off rather effectively despite the warmer days. Onshore flow and king tides will lead to beach hazards of rough surf, rip currents, and coastal flooding from Georgia to Atlantic Florida. I'm AccuWeather.com meteorologist LaTroy Thornton.
Follow us wherever you get your podcasts. Apple, Spotify, Amazon, YouTube. Just search America in the Morning in your favorite listening app. I'm John Trout. The political world is reacting to this week's Texas Senate debate. Correspondent Clayton Neville reports polling is still very close between Colin Allred and Senator Ted Cruz.
The day after the debate brought a slew of fact-checking emails from Democrat Congressman Colin Allred's campaign, and Senator Ted Cruz's camp painted Allred as a liar and said that he was dodging questions. There were some contentious moments in a debate that touched on immigration, women's rights, the economy, even January 6th, as brought up by the congressman.
I have to say, you can't be for the mob on January 6th and for the officers. You can't. And it's not funny, because you're a threat to democracy. Sure. I was on the House floor when we went through the votes. I remember when you objected to the results in Arizona. Y'all at home might remember where you were on January 6th, what you were doing. I know where I was, and I know where he was. I remember when they told us to reach under our seats for these gas masks. I didn't know we had, because they had deployed tear gas in the rotunda.
And Senator Cruz went after Allred's record on men and women's sports.
4 times he has come out for men playing in women's sports, for boys playing in girls' sports. He is a co-sponsor, and he voted for a law called the Equality Act. The Equality Act mandated that boys be able to go in girls' bathrooms, in their locker rooms, and their changing rooms. He voted for it. That is his record. Number 2, there was a bill. It was a very simple bill. It was narrowly defined. It was protecting women and girls' sports. He voted no. The only issue on that bill was whether biological boys should compete against our daughters. That's not fair.
Political experts say there was not a clear-cut winner. Matthew Wilson is a political science professor at SMU in Dallas.
I really don't think so. I think, depending on the issues that you particularly cared about or your candidate preferences, you could see one or the other with a slight edge. But overall, Ted Cruz is a very polished and accomplished debater, so he was probably rhetorically a little more smooth, but I think both candidates made the core points that they wanted to make, the themes of their campaign. Nobody made a serious mistake. So I think it was, more or less a draw.
The race quickly became one of the most expensive in state history as both candidates launched a slew of campaign ads in the final weeks ahead of the November 5th election. It's a race that Cruz leads in the polls by a small margin. I'm Clayton Neville.
In the Middle East, the U.S. launched an airstrike against 5 locations in Yemen that were believed to be Houthi weapons storage facilities. Defense Secretary Lloyd Austin said that B-2 stealth bombers struck what he described as hardened underground locations. The attack included one in Yemen's capital city and marked the first time the American military used these strategic stealth bombers to attack the Iranian-backed group in Yemen. Also from the Middle East, in Israel, more aid was allowed into the Gaza Strip following U.S. concerns that not enough relief was getting to the Palestinians in the coastal enclave. This comes after Secretary of State Antony Blinken sent a letter to Israel demanding more humanitarian aid get into Gaza, or the U.S. would consider making cuts to Israeli military aid. Correspondent Karen Shamas reports Hezbollah shot dozens more missiles at an Israeli city, and the IDF responded with an airstrike in southern Beirut.
Lebanon's health ministry has said Israeli airstrikes on the city of Nabateeh have killed at least 5 people. Breathless and panicked from the several strikes around him, Mohammed Ali Obeid filmed columns of smoke rising from the horizon of Nabateeh, saying, "There are airstrikes on us now in Nabateeh, a series of airstrikes." Authorities have said the provincial capital's municipality building, which was full of local government staff, was hit. Local officials have confirmed to the AP that Nabateeh's mayor, Ahmad Kahil, was killed in the airstrikes. Israel also killed at least 15 people in the southern Lebanese town of Kana. Earlier in the week, Israeli strikes over Nabateeh destroyed its historic century-old market district. Meanwhile, Israel resumes strikes on southern Beirut after Lebanon's caretaker Prime Minister Najib Mikati said the United States had given him assurances that Israel would curb its strikes on the capital. There was no immediate word on casualties. I'm Karen Shamas.
A man arrested and charged with a felony after abandoning his dog chained up in floodwaters during Florida's last hurricane. Correspondent Julie Walker has that story.
A Florida man under arrest for animal cruelty after state troopers had to rescue his dog.
It's okay, buddy. It's okay.
The bull terrier left chained to a post in rising floodwaters on the interstate as Hurricane Milton bared down. Governor Ron DeSantis.
You don't just tie up a dog and have them out there for a storm. Totally unacceptable, and we're going to hold you accountable. Well, I'm proud to announce that the authorities have identified the dog's former owners, and State Attorney Susie Lopez is now pursuing animal cruelty charges.
Man was caught after he went to an animal shelter looking for his dog. DeSantis says the dog is okay and being adopted by someone else. He also stresses the state has zero tolerance for lawbreakers of any kind.
Hillsborough County Sheriff's Office, who got somebody trying to take a generator away from a power light. Daytona Beach, arresting people for looting. Sarasota, going in, a guy was breaking into an apartment complex. Port Richey, taking debris and dumping it in somebody else's private property.
I'm Julie Walker.
When we return, former Democrat official sentenced to decades in prison. That story, When America in the Morning, continues after these messages. You're with America in the Morning. I'm John Trout. In Tennessee, the family of a factory worker who died after his company ordered people to work despite the oncoming hurricane has filed a wrongful death suit. Katie Clark has the story.
A grieving family has hired a lawyer to sue for wrongful death of their loved one. Impact Plastics, a plastics manufacturing plant in Irwin, Tennessee, about 40 miles north of Asheville, North Carolina, is situated in a known flood zone next to a river. The morning that Hurricane Helene moved into the area, workers were getting alerts to evacuate low-lying zones, which included Impact Plastics. The lawsuit claims that a memo had been sent previously saying it would be work as usual that day. It also claims company management did not provide briefings or evacuation plans to workers. Johnny Peterson was texting with his daughter from the factory as the floodwaters were rising, sending her chilling videos of the parking lot being overtaken by floodwater. 11 workers were swept away. 5 were rescued. He and 5 others died. Daughter Alexa Peterson speaking on WSMV TV Nashville.
The whole thing feels a bit like a fever dream. It doesn't feel like he's actually dead. It doesn't feel like this flood actually hit.
The Peterson family lawyer, Alex Little, also on WSMV TV, speaking about why the company didn't send workers home that day.
We understand, again from witnesses, that the company was behind on some of its orders. They had parts they had to get out the door that they were behind on.
I'm Katie Clark.
The flooding and destruction from Hurricane Helene has left many schools in North Carolina and Tennessee closed weeks after the storm. Teachers and parents are asking what's next. Correspondent Rita Foley reports.
Tens of thousands of students in the Southeast are dealing with school disruptions after Hurricane Helene damaged homes, campuses, and municipal power and water systems. Some districts have no idea when they will reopen. Virtual learning helped during the COVID school closures, but that isn't an option now because internet and cell phone service is spotty since the storm hit in late September. In hard-hit western North Carolina, some districts warn students will miss up to a month of school, and others say they can't even figure out a timeline for returning to classrooms. Even when schools do reopen, educators worry the disruption could have profound effects on students' learning and emotional well-being. I'm Rita Foley.
A former Las Vegas area Democrat official who was found guilty of killing a local journalist has now learned his fate. Correspondent Mike Hempen reports.
A judge has sentenced Robert Tellis to 28 years in Nevada State Prison for killing an investigative journalist who wrote articles critical of Tellis's conduct in office and exposed an intimate relationship with a female co-worker. Tellis was found guilty of murder in the death of Las Vegas Review-Journal reporter Jeff Gearman. Tellis denied stabbing Gearman to death in September 2022, but the evidence against him was strong, including his DNA beneath Gearman's fingernails. At the time, Tellis was the elected administrator of a county office that handles unclaimed estate and probate property cases. Tellis's defense attorney says his client plans to appeal his conviction. I'm Mike Hempen.
In Nebraska, the Cornhusker state is one of 10 that have abortion-related initiatives on the ballot. But Nebraska has 2 competing measures, one that provides access to abortion up to 24 weeks, and the other seeks to codify the state's current 12-week restriction. Additionally, the state Supreme Court ruled that convicted felons who have completed their jail sentences are now allowed to register to vote. All of this comes as Nebraska, a state that is not winner-take-all, could see the district that is home to Omaha give Kamala Harris their one electoral vote. The other 4 are expected to go to Donald Trump. America in the Morning continues. Former One Direction band member Liam Payne has died. His death under investigation in Argentina. Correspondent Haya Panjwani reports.
Local officials in Argentina confirm that former One Direction singer Liam Payne has been found dead after falling from a third-floor hotel balcony in Buenos Aires. The head of the state emergency medical system said that Payne fell into a courtyard of the Casa Sur Hotel in the trendy Palermo neighborhood of Argentina's capital. The official declined to answer further questions about the incident, including whether Payne jumped from the balcony or fell by accident. I'm Haya Panjwani.
It's no surprise big tech is power hungry. It looks like 3 of the biggest players are going nuclear. Here's Chuck Palm with that in today's Tech Report.
Amazon has announced they have joined Microsoft and Google in becoming big tech companies in search of nuclear power. Amazon is seeking to add capacity in the Pacific Northwest and Virginia, their 2 big data center hotspots, and have struck a deal with X Energy and 2 other development agreements to add around 300 megawatts of capacity. X Energy specializes in high-temperature gas-cooled reactors, an approach that fell out of favor in the U.S., but as new designs have emerged, has seen a revival in Japan and China. Using carbon-coated uranium, helium is injected between the particles and heated to 750 degrees Celsius, from which steam is used to spin a turbine. Google announced a deal on Monday with Kairos, giving nuclear fission a boost in the face of growing progress under nuclear fusion. Earlier this month, Microsoft announced a deal to reinitialize the 3 Mile Island reactor. All 3 of the big tech nuclear deals have yet to be commercially proven. For more tech news, follow me on X at Chuck Palm.
America in the Morning's Robert Workman has Thursday Sports.
National League Championship Series in New York last night, the Dodgers rolled over the Mets 8-0, their second shutout romp in the series, which they lead 2-1. LA scratched out a couple of runs in the second inning on a walk, an error, an infield hit, and a sacrifice fly. Then they unpacked the whooping sticks. Kike Hernandez belted a 2-run shot to left center in the 6th. Shohei Ohtani pulled a 3-run dinger out to right in the 8th, and Max Muncy capped it off with a leadoff shot in the 9th. 5 Dodger pitchers allowed just 4 singles and struck out 13. Hernandez says everybody contributed.
I'm glad I was able to get on base for Shohei to hit that ball that still hasn't landed, and shout out to the pitching staff, shout out to Will calling that game behind the plate, another shutout, and just now turn the page and look forward to tomorrow.
Game 4 is tonight at Citi Field. ALCS resumes today in Cleveland. The Yankees up 2-0 on the Guardians. 3-time reigning batting champ Luis Arias of the Padres had surgery on his left thumb, which he injured on a slide back in June. He was hitting .310 at the time. He finished at .314. He's good. NHL Wednesday, the Penguins blunted the Sabres 6-5 on Sidney Crosby's overtime goal. That and 2 assists make him the 10th player to pass 1,600 points for his career. Evgeny Malkin got his 500th career goal in the game as well. Maple Leafs crunched the Kings 6-2. Austin Matthews, last year's top goal scorer, got his first goal this season in Toronto's 4th game, plus his first 2 assists. Bruins beat the Avalanche 5-3. Colorado slips to 0-4 to start the season, 3 of those losses at home, and the Ducks down to Utah 5-4 in overtime for their first victory. That's Thursday Sports.
Thank you, Robert. When we return on America in the Morning, famous comedian in the hot seat for political comments after these messages. Welcome back here with America in the Morning, and thanks for listening. Comedian Jerry Seinfeld is taking back some of his comments he made about politics and comedy that some thought were not funny. Kevin Carr has details.
Comedian Jerry Seinfeld is walking back some of his comments he made this summer while promoting his film Unfrosted. On the New Yorker Radio Hour in May, he made headlines by lashing out at the, quote, extreme left and how they were killing comedy.
This is the result of the extreme left and PC crap
and people worrying so much about offending other people, well, that's the end of your comedy.
Now Seinfeld is taking it back. He was a guest on Breaking Bread with Tom Papa this week and wanted to set the record straight.
I don't think, as I said, the extreme left has done anything to inhibit the art of comedy.
Right.
I'm taking that back now officially.
Another comment from this summer, this one about masculinity, took place on Honestly with Barry Weiss in May.
I miss a dominant masculinity. Yeah, I get the toxic thing. I get it. But still, I like a real man.
The 70-year-old comedian revisited his statement on Papa's podcast as well.
What I was really saying was I miss big personalities.
Right.
That's what I miss.
Yeah.
Seinfeld explained that he never expected anyone to pay such attention to some of the things he was saying in general conversation, and he was stunned the original comments made headlines.
How many conversations have we had? Well, I'll say something to you, I'll make a pronouncement, and then the next day I go, you know what, I wasn't right.
Serenity now, Jerry. I'm Kevin Carr.
A full-scale replica of the annex where Anne Frank and her family hid from Nazis during the Holocaust is heading to New York. Correspondent Donna Warder has more on that story.
In 1942, Anne Frank, a 13-year-old Jewish girl, and her family went into hiding from Nazi occupiers in the annex of a home in Amsterdam. They and another family stayed there until they were discovered in 1944. Now an exact replica of the annex is being built in the Netherlands. It'll be shipped to New York, where it will be on display at the Center for Jewish History in Manhattan. Ronald Leopold is director of the Anne Frank House.
Our visitors will learn about Anne not just as a victim, but through the multifaceted lens of her life, as a teenage girl, as a writer, as a symbol of resilience and of strength.
And on display will be photos, albums, and one of the yellow stars the Nazis ordered Jews to wear.
With devastating anti-Semitism and other forms of group hatred on the rise in the US, but also across the world, we feel it's our responsibility as Anne Frank House has never been greater.
I'm Donna Warder.
That's our show for today, Thursday, October 17th, 2024. America in the Morning is produced by Jeff McKay. Senior producer Kevin Delaney. I'm John Trout. This is Westwood One.